On the morning of September 10th, 1988, 15-year-old Lee Boxell walked out of his family home in Cheam, Sutton, and into the bright sunshine of an unseasonably warm day. It seemed like an ordinary Saturday. Lee, football mad and dedicated to his beloved Sutton United, had told his parents he was going to watch a local derby at Selhurst Park, the home of Crystal Palace. His usual weekend routine revolved around football, and he was known for always returning promptly for supper or calling if he expected to be late. But on this day, unlike every other before it, Lee never came home. Born in 1973, Lee Darren Boxell was the first child of Peter and Christine. His sister Lindsay followed 2 years later, and together the siblings grew up in a loving, close-knit household. The Boxells spent many years in Germany, where Peter was posted for work designing buildings on British military bases, before returning to their family home in Cheam in 1984. Lee was remembered as kind, considerate, and diligent, even if not especially academic. At Cheam High School, he was a well-behaved student who very rarely got into trouble. Teachers and peers alike saw him as a good-natured boy. Shortly before his disappearance, Lee had completed a successful period of work experience at Barclays Bank, which suggested he was beginning to explore possible futures. Friends and family recall him as a devoted football supporter, proudly wearing his Sutton United colours and travelling with fellow fans when games were close enough. His interests were typical for a boy of his age: football, pop music, and time with friends. Posters of George Michael, Simon Le Bon, and Kylie Minogue adorned his bedroom walls, alongside photographs and mementos of his favourite team. To his parents, though, he was more than a typical teenager. He was dependable, thoughtful, and protective of those around him. Peter recalled curling up with his son in an armchair to read naughty stories when he was younger, memories that remained vivid long after Lee mysteriously disappeared. Lee's character, his family insists, made it highly unlikely that he would have run away or stayed out without calling. Unlike many teenagers, he was very conscientious about letting his parents know where he was. This made what happened on September the 10th, 1988, all the more bewildering. On that Saturday morning, Christine left home to care for her elderly mother in Bromley. Peter drove Lindsay to spend time with a friend before going shopping in Sutton. Lee was left at home, still half asleep and in his pyjamas, slumped in the armchair. When his father asked him what he planned to do that day, Lee mumbled a vague response, and Peter chose not to press him. Sometime later, Lee changed into a white Fred Flintstone t-shirt, a pair of black jeans, and some brown shoes, and left the house. He met with a school friend, Russell, and the two spent the morning browsing local shops and an amusement arcade. Around midday, Russell decided to return home to watch horse racing on TV, leaving Lee alone in Sutton High Street. This was the last confirmed sighting of Lee Boxell by someone who knew him personally. Several reported sightings of the teenager surfaced in the days that followed. One suggested Lee had been seen at Sutton Station with an unidentified male individual, though this was never substantiated. Another witness reported seeing him near a Tesco store at 2:20 p.m. The timing suggested it was unlikely that he had made it to the football match as originally planned. When Lee failed to return home that evening, his parents understandably grew increasingly anxious. They contacted friends, neighbours and relatives before eventually calling the police. At first, officers suggested they shouldn't worry. It was not unusual for a teenage boy to stay out late. but Lee's parents knew that this was deeply out of character. By the next day, when police joined Peter in driving around Sutton to search for him, the Boxells were already consumed by fear. The initial police response in 1988 was hampered by the lack of modern tools. CCTV coverage was virtually non-existent, and appeals relied heavily on posters, newspaper articles, and word of mouth. An early attempt to publicise Lee's case included an appeal by Wimbledon footballer John Fashanu, but press interest was extremely limited. Christine, desperate to raise awareness about her missing son, wrote letter after letter to newspapers, only to be told bluntly that, quote, "It's just a 15-year-old boy." She later reflected bitterly that if Lee had been a girl, the case might have received more attention. Theories emerged, but none were conclusive. The possibility of him running away was dismissed quickly, as there were no family or school problems and no sign of unhappiness. An early focus on the train station sighting proved fruitless, and the investigation eventually grew cold. For decades, the family lived in uncertainty, pursuing every lead and enduring false alarms, such as the time Peter rushed to a market in Perivale after hearing a boy resembling Lee was working there, only to find that it was not his son. A dramatic shift came in 2013 when the Metropolitan Police reopened Lee's case. This time, attention turned to an unofficial youth club called The Shed, located in the graveyard of St Dunstan's Church in Cheam. The club had been run by William Lambert, a gravedigger later convicted of multiple sexual assaults on underage girls. Detectives developed the theory that Lee might have been at the shed on the day of his disappearance and could have intervened to stop an assault, resulting in his death. Lambert allegedly boasted to others that he had killed Lee and buried him in the churchyard. In response, police undertook a massive excavation of the site between 2013 and 2014, a year-long operation costing £1 million. Yet, despite the scale of the search, no remains were found. Lambert, who denied involvement, could not be charged in connection with Lee's disappearance, likely due to lack of evidence. Although this line of inquiry remains central to police thinking, the absence of concrete evidence has left the case unresolved. Theories continue to circulate, but the truth about what happened to Lee has never been established. For Peter and Christine, the years since Lee's disappearance have been marked by grief and the agonising absence of closure. At first, they refused to leave their house together, fearful that Lee might return while they were away. They never moved from the family home, believing that if he were alive, he would come back to the place he knew. For decades, Lee's bedroom remained untouched, with his school blazer still hanging in the wardrobe and his posters slowly yellowing on the walls. Only in recent years have the couple allowed their grandchildren's toys into the room, a quiet acknowledgement that life has moved forward without him. Still, photographs of Lee dominate their living room, a constant reminder of the boy they lost. Christine admitted that her focus on finding Lee sometimes caused her to neglect Lindsay during her teenage years, a regret she carries. Yet Lindsay, now an adult with children of her own, has expressed understanding. For her, growing up with a missing brother shaped her identity, instilling in her both resilience and heightened protectiveness as a parent. She acknowledges the slim possibility that Lee is alive, but recognises after so many years that it is unlikely. Peter and Christine have lived with a relentless cycle of hope and despair. Each anniversary, each birthday, and each Christmas has been overshadowed by the absence of their son. The family's ordeal exemplifies the unique torment faced by those with missing loved ones. The lack of certainty is its own form of torture. Lee Boxell's case is one of thousands in Britain each year, but it has highlighted systemic challenges in how missing children are treated by media and police. In the late 1980s, the disappearance of a teenage boy attracted little coverage, reflecting societal biases in how cases were prioritised. The Boxells' experience underscores how critical early publicity can be in such investigations. Out of their pain, however, came new forms of advocacy and support. The Boxells became closely connected with the charity Missing People, which provides nationwide assistance to families of the disappeared. Founded in 1993, the charity offers caseworkers, helplines, and publicity support, filling the void left by limited institutional resources. Perhaps the most remarkable legacy emerged from Peter's dream in 2013 during the excavation at St Dunstan's. In his dream, he sang a song about Lee, and he later performed it at a Christmas carol service at the St Martin in the Fields. This moment gave rise to the Missing People Choir, founded by Claire Cook and James Hawkins. Made up of relatives of missing people, the choir has performed across the country, even reaching the finals of Britain's Got Talent in 2017, and even help reunite a missing boy with his family after one of their televised performances. Through music, Peter and others transformed personal grief into collective hope, raising awareness of missing persons and offering solidarity to those who endure the same painful uncertainty. At the time of his disappearance, Lee Darren Boxell was 15 years of age. He was described as a Caucasian male with light brown hair and blue eyes, with a medium build and fair complexion, standing at 5'8" tall. He notably had a dimple on his left cheek and was last seen wearing a Fred Flintstones t-shirt, a pair of black jeans, and a pair of brown shoes. He was also carrying a small quantity of money on his person. If Lee were alive today, in 2025, he would be 52 years old. To his parents, Lee remains the smiling 15-year-old boy who left home on a September morning and never returned. His disappearance remains an open wound, but also a catalyst for change, inspiring awareness, charity, and community for countless families facing similar nightmares. For Peter and Christine, and for Lindsay and her children, the ultimate wish is simple: to know what happened to Lee. Until then, his memory endures not only in their home in Cheam, but also in the wider work of those who continue to speak his name and hope for answers.